So we've got the new selection pack, Dragon's Reincarnation, which is overall pretty mid, aside from one card that people are losing their minds over, which is Mulcharmy Fuwalos. The card that many people are just deeming as maxi 2, basically. And I mean, just look at its artwork. You see those smug ass birds in the top left corner? Doesn't that make you just want to drop a finger on them when they hit the grave? So, anyways, yeah, basically you activate this each time your opponent special summons a card, a monster from the deck or extra deck, you draw a card. And the end phase shuffle effect, honestly, this is so irrelevant. This is like half the text of this card is unnecessary because the shuffle effect only triggers if you have 6 more cards in your hand that your opponent controls. So, oh no, man, you can only end your turn with a +6 on your opponent from drawing cards. What a shame, right? That makes this card unplayable, right? But yeah, basically against a lot of decks in Yu-Gi-Oh right now, this having a Fuwalos dropped on you is essentially almost like having a Maxi dropped on you. There are many decks that simply will have to pass turn when this is dropped. Otherwise, you're giving your opponent what, like 3, 4, 5+ cards drawn if you want to do your combo. So we'll see how much this is being played. If this gets played a lot, then it's good to know some decks that can play around this card. So I'm going to highlight some decks that do play around this card very well, and I'm going to show you some combo lines from those decks that give you your opponent minimum draws off Mulcharmy Fuwalos. Now, I'm not gonna show any like stun decks or back row decks or like labyrinth, because like obviously the way to beat a card that benefits from special summoning is to not special summon forehead. Like everyone knows that, right? I want to show decks that that despite still special summoning, still play well into this card. So yeah, I'll show you the first one right now. So the first deck I want to showcase that's good against Fuwalos is Rescue Ace, or I guess some people might have called this deck Rescue Ass in the past few runs, specifically because of Tenpai. And while Tenpai is not dead, I do expect it to see at least a bit of a drop in play from last format, you know, given the banless hits. And honestly, the main problem that this deck had with Tenpai was Sang and Summoning, because Sang and Summoning turned off all of your backbone and all of your interrupts generally. This deck doesn't have a good way of dealing with spell and traps. But with Sang and Summoning limited now, there's like a lower chance that they actually hard open it, so then your back row actually does something in the matchup. But anyway, this isn't specifically about Tenpai. This is a video about Fuwalos, and yeah, the nice thing about Rescue Ace, and it's also been the same way against Maxi. It's a side note, all of these decks that I'm showcasing that are good against Fuwalos happen to also be good against Maxi, which is also important. You know, in a format with like 6 to 9 Maxis, being able to play around both of the Maxi cards is very beneficial. So yeah, if your opponent ever drops one of these cards on you, like a Fuwalos, you can just end your play early, and you can just go Turbulence, then you can go Set 4, and then you get 2 to 3 interruptions off of that, off of just one extra Fuwalos draw. And also cool is that this deck has Emergency, which is quickly the special summon from the deck. So if your opponent goes Fuwalos, you can also chain Emergency to the Fuwalos so that your opponent doesn't even get the draw off the Emergency. And then you can go Set 4, and your opponent draws like 0 to 1 cards off the Fuwalos. So yeah. Also, these decks, I'm not maining Fuwalos, and I'm not playing Fuwalos in any of these decks, since a lot of these decks can't really take advantage of Fuwalos going first, right? It's often usually a dead card. I know in here there's Bellstar and there's 1-for-1 that can technically pitch Fuwalos, but there's only 5 copies of those cards in this deck. I guess there's 6 if you count the original Sinless Spoilers itself, but then at that point you're normal summoning Fuwalos to ascend for original Sinless Spoilers. Like that's not really what you want to be doing. But yeah, if you don't open one of these 5 cards I wanted, 1-for-1 or Bellstar with the Fuwalos, and the Fuwalos is just a completely dead card in your hand. So I just don't bother maining it and don't bother playing it in this deck. Also, I'm not even running the 1 Fuwalos for the cross-out, because you simply don't need to have the cross-out for this one card. It's because I'm going to show you a combo that just plays around Fuwalos and gives your opponent minimal draws anyway. You don't need to use the cross-out for it in the first place. You know, save it for something else, like a more beneficial, like a more impactful hand trap, right? And yeah, the thing is with Rescues is that most of your special summons are from hand, right? A lot of times you're using cards that search your rescue ace monsters like Searcher, Preventer, and Search for Turbulence, right? Like Hydrant can search Preventer or Turbulence directly. Airlifter can search Alert, which if you control a Hydron field, which a lot of your combo lines will have a Hydron field already, then you Alert will search the Turbulence or Preventer from deck, then you can special summon them from the hand. So that bypasses the Fuwalos because you're adding the monsters to hand and then special summoning them from the hand as opposed to special summoning them directly from the deck. You do have cards again that do special summon from the deck, but these are also Emergency is also chainable, so that's even though it does play into Fuwalos, it can also play around Fuwalos. And generally, a lot of times, the main way your opponent is going to draw off Fuwalos is basically off of the Snake Eyes cards, which is basically original Voiceless Voice. And even then, your opponent really only gets 1-2 draws max off of any line that you begin with original Voiceless Voice, because you're getting 1 draw off the original Voiceless Voice, and then they're getting maybe 1 extra draw when you want to make like an SP to potentially protect your Turbulence from Infirm. But other than that, which your opponent, you can stop right there. You can prevent your opponent from getting any additional draws after that. So your opponent is rarely going to draw more than 2 cards off of Fuwalos. In fact, they should probably almost never draw more than 2 cards off Fuwalos, since you can just end your combo early and then still end with your Turbulence sending your 4 back row without committing any further. So yeah, this build is I guess the extra looks a bit weird. I'll cover why I'm still playing this package in the extra deck, although you don't have to. But for the main deck, it's the standard ratios for the main Rescue Ace core now is 2 Hydrants, 1 Poplar, 2 Airlifter, because this, for some reason, this card is still semi-limited. Don't know why Konami's afraid of Rescue Ace now all of a sudden, but still afraid of Rescue Ace, but whatever. 3 Black Witch, 2 Preventer, 1 Turbulence, 1 to 2 Turbulence. You can run a second Turbulence too. In fact, running a second Turbulence is also does play around Fuwalos better as well, because you know, if you just hard open it, you can just special summon from the hand, and then you don't even need to get it off like an emergency, for example. Yeah, the 1 Rhoda to search the Airlifter, 1 for 1, because these are level 1 cards, and then 2 Bonfire for the Poplar. Just don't open Poplar plus Bonfire together forehead. 1 original Voiceless Voice, 1 HQ, double Called by a Crossout. You could argue that you don't need Crossout necessarily, since the deck already plays around Maxi and Fuwalos so well already. And then Rescue, Alert, 3 Emergency, 1 Wanted, Infinite, 2 then the 2 Traps, Contain and Extinguish is also Reinforce. So yeah, you could run Reinforce as well, but this was more for like a Tenpai thing, and even then I didn't really even like this versus Tenpai, because this doesn't necessarily save you. If your Tenpai opponent is like not dumb, which I know sometimes that's asking a lot for Tenpai players, but they can still ODK you through a Reinforce if they have a good enough hand already, which if you're activating a Reinforce, chances are you weren't in a good position in the first place, and they can just make a triple attacking Dryden with like 6k attack, and that still attacks over your double reinforced Rescue Ace monster, and then they can kill you with any other monster. But you can run this if you want, if you're still afraid of Tenpai. And yeah, then it's just some non-engine Baylor, Maxi, Ash, and Infirm. If you want to cut like some of the hand traps, like if you say you want to cut a Baylor, you can run Impulse instead and run 3 Impulse and 1 Fire Engine. This way, it's basically a more engine, and Impulse is a decent card. It's also an additional surge target if you already have your full combo, like, you know, off of a Rhoda or off a Hydrant. The thing is that Impulse is not a real hand trap, so especially with like U-Bell running around now, like you actually need to resolve real hand traps for your opponent. Like, it doesn't matter if you go Impulse into like a Fire Hydrant or into a Fire Engine and then have this starting on the board. If your opponent does full U-Bell combo with a Rugis, Soul of Rage, all of that stuff, I mean, this Fire Engine on the field is not necessarily really the Fire Engine plus like a Airlifter is not really helping you break that board. You're still likely going to lose that game. And of course, there's also a bunch of pseudo FDKs. There's stuff like Pendulum that ends on Secret Village and does like the whole thing. And also Tenpai, this card is also absolutely terrible versus Tenpai because it doesn't keep you alive. I'm going to say that. But yeah, I feel like the format is a bit too high powered to be running Impulse in my opinion over like a real hand trap, so that's why I'm running real hand traps. You can run this instead. And yeah, the extra deck, so I'm running the Terahertz engine. The Terahertz engine is basically the Save Worm, Packbid, Aggregator, Firewall, Terahertz, Link Decoder, Reproducus, and Protectile Talker. If you don't want to run the Terahertz package, you can cut every single one of those cards I just mentioned. It saves you like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 slots. So you can save 8 slots in your extra deck and just run generic Link monsters and stuff like Typhon instead if you don't want to run the Terahertz package. The reason I'm still running the Terahertz package is because it puts up a spell and trap negate for the Save Worm, and that's the biggest weakness of the deck, which is board wipes like Heavy Storm, Lightning Storm, or like Feather Duster, which is the main matchup where that's a problem is obviously Tenpai. So this is still kind of a holdover for like a Tenpai format. If you're not afraid of those cards, then you can save 8 slots and just run all the generic Link monsters instead, like other Charmers and stuff like that, and like Relinquished Anima and all of those things. But if you're still respecting the Tenpai matchup and if you still want to, not auto lose the board breakers, then you can play this package. Also, the main thing about this package is that you're ending on Terahertz instead of Appaloosa in the other builds. So if you weren't playing this package, you would be ending on an Appaloosa instead of a Terahertz, which is technically more disruption. It's just it's weaker in the board breakers. But other than that, Link Karibo, I think Nightmare Phoenix, the Fire Charmer, at least one SP. You would run the second SP if you weren't running the Terahertz package. Promethean, Zealantis, and Raging Phoenix for the OTK. I think those cards are still necessary in the extra deck. So, yeah. Now I'll show you a pretty standard combo that plays very well into Fuwalos. So yeah, this is a pretty good hand. 2 hand traps, Diabellstar, Emergency, Bonfire. So the combo I'm going to show you is actually one of the weaker combos this deck has to Fuwalos. This deck has combos where such as Normal Summon Airlifter, which can get you the full Turbulence set 4 with just 1 draw under Fuwalos. So then, yeah, Diabellstar, opening Diabellstar or Bonfire gives your opponent 1 extra draw off Fuwalos. So that's it. So for example, right, Bonfire will search the Poplar, and then you'll special the Poplar, and you're going to add OSS. And a lot of times your opponent is going to Fuwalos you here. They're either going to Fuwalos you before you make the Link Karibo, or they're going to Fuwalos you chain to the original Simple Spoils. Well, let's assume they Fuwalos you right here. Okay? To give your opponent the minimal amount of draws, you wouldn't make the Link Karibo at all. You would just OSS, send this Poplar, and then get out your Hydra. So that's where your opponent gets 1 draw Fuwalos, and you're not going to use Poplar effect. You don't, because there's no other Snake Eye cards in this deck. You can't take advantage of the Poplar in your back row. In fact, it's just going to clog your back row. So don't use the effect, and you're going to use Hydrant. You're going to search Airlifter, and then Normal Summon Airlifter, and then Airlifter is going to add Alert, and you're going to activate Alert, and add your Turbulence. Okay? And now, because you only have 1 rescue Ace spell trap in your back row, you do have to link this. You have to link in order to get these off. So here's where your opponent will get a second draw. You're gonna link these 2 off into SP Little Knight, just to play around a potential Imperm on your Turbulence. So your opponent gets 2 draws. Now you're gonna special Turbulence, and you're gonna banish Hydrant plus Airlifter to summon your Turbulence. And here you're gonna Turbulence set 4. So you set both traps and rescue and an emergency. So your opponent got 2 draws off of Fuwalos, but in exchange you have an SP plus Turbulence set 4 still for 2 draws. And keep in mind, this was the weakest combo that the deck had into Fuwalos. If you open, again, Normal Summon Airlifter, you would have this field, except your opponent would only have 1 draw instead. So, yeah, and then obviously during your opponent's turn, you would activate Emergency, and then Emergency will get a Preventer, and then Preventer would sack itself, and then that would trigger Preventer's effect, and Preventer will special summon the Hydrant. So now your Contain and your Extinguish have bonus effects now, and at any point you can rescue and summon back the Preventer, and Preventer is another Book of Moon. So this is essentially 1, 2, 3, 4 interruptions off of just one card, and your opponent only drew 2 cards off the Fuwalos, which is definitely an exchange that's in your favor. And also keep in mind the Extinguish and Contain are very powerful interruptions because they have the bonus effects now, where your opponent cannot link monsters if hit by Contain, and they cannot special summon, or they cannot activate the effects of monsters with the same name destroyed by Extinguish. So you have 2 super powerful interruptions plus 2 extra interruptions off of the 2 Fuwalos draws. So this is why I think this deck is very, very good in a format where Fuwalos will be played. So the next deck that's very good against Fuwalos is Centur-Ion, specifically Pure / Pure Bestial Centur-Ion. If you add any other engines to the deck, like White Forest or Toy Box, that's when you start playing into Fuwalos more, and you start getting weaker to discard. But if you're just playing pure Centur-Ion, the pure 1-card combo that ends on a Auxilla plus a Phalanx, Fuwalos almost does nothing to your deck. In fact, the standard 1-card Centur-Ion combo gives your opponent 1 draw off Fuwalos, which, and enjoy playing your traditional Upstart Goblin. They're honestly better off not even Fuwalosing you on your turn. They're better off holding the Fuwalos for their turn, and then using a Fuwalos on their turn, so that way they draw at least 1 extra card off of the Crimson Dragon into Blazar. But at that point, if they Fuwalos you on their turn, you don't even have to go for Crimson Dragon. You can just say okay, cool, take your Upstart, and you'll just make a Legacia instead, and then they only get 1 draw, and then you still get the pop, and you get a draw as well. And you're playing a 1-card combo deck, so the other cards in your hand are likely hand traps too. So yeah, this deck is obviously very good against Fuwalos. I think generally people already know that about this deck. The one point of contention that I know people are gonna probably ask is, why aren't you playing Fuwalos in this deck yourself, right? Because this is a deck that theoretically can take advantage of Fuwalos, mainly because you discard a card every time you get the combo with Stand-Up Centur-Ion, and then since you have to discard a card, if you have a Fuwalos in hand, that's just a free discard anyways. So it doesn't matter if it's dead, if you can just discard it, right? And in theory, that is true. However, a couple reasons why I'm still not playing Fuwalos in even Centur-Ion is that, number one, you have to get to Stand-Up Centur-Ion first. So a lot of times this deck kind of loses to hand traps, sort of. Because there's not much engine in your deck. I believe there's only 14 starters, and that's only because I'm playing Bonfire. A lot of builds don't even run Bonfire, in which case they would only have 12 starters in their Centur-Ion deck. So a lot of times if you get ashed on Primera, or sometimes even your opponent just imperms or Veilers your normal summon, you don't get to Stand-Up Centur-Ion. So then the Fuwalos is still dead in your hand, and you would have wished this was any other hand trap, right? So that's one thing. If Fuwalos isn't a dead card, assuming you can actually get to your combo, assuming you don't get interrupted. But if you do get interrupted, then oftentimes this Fuwalos, you can't get to stand up, and then this will still be a dead card in hand. And then if this was any other hand traps, you could at least use it, but the Fuwalos you can't. And also another thing is that this deck draws a lot of cards after using stand up, right? Between Legacia and Branded Regained, and of course, Maxi as well, but mainly because of Regain and Legacia, you tend to draw 2 cards. Sometimes you draw 2 to 3 cards after doing your full combo already. So at that point, if you draw into Fuwalos off of, say, a Branded Regain or off the Legacia draw, then it actually is still dead, because at that point you already used your Stand-Up Centur-Ion discard effect. You discarded a real card, and then you're drawing into a Fuwalos, which is now something that you can't use because you control cards. And then you draw another card on your opponent's turn with the Regain. So you have 3 draws after you already used your 1 discard. So if any point you obviously draw Fuwalos later after that, then this is a dead card in hand. And you get into grind games a lot. This deck depends a lot on non-engine. That's why there's so many hand traps in here. So drawing hand traps off of your draws of a regain and your Legacia is very good, but drawing Fuwalos is not good at all. In fact, it's like completely detrimental to you because now you're drawing dead cards instead of hand traps you can use to disrupt your opponent. Also, another thing is, this is a bit more minor, but sometimes when you resolve Fuwalos and you're playing against, let's say you're playing against one of the decks that I'm showing you in this video, right? The Fuwalos does not actually help you that much because you're drawing 1, maybe 2 cards off of it. And then instead of having a real hand trap that stopped your opponent. And Centur-Ion is not good at playing to opposed boards. Even if you get 2 draws out of it, your engine is not good at playing the boards. They're very vulnerable, like Primera, Trudea, and your stand-ups. They're vulnerable to the disruption, they're vulnerable to other hand traps themselves. But you would rather stop your opponent from setting up their board entirely than to draw 2, even if you draw more cards. If you draw 3 or 4 cards, there's a chance you still can't break their field because your engine is not strong enough playing the boards. Whereas if you had just drawn a real hand traps instead of Fuwalos and potentially stopped them from setting up their board, then you have a better chance in that game. So that's why I'm not playing Fuwalos in Centur-Ion, even though I know this is a bit strange and I know that Fuwalos is standard in a lot of Centur-Ion lists. I personally don't really like it that much. But again, it'll depend on the format and what decks are seen in play. Maybe there'll be a time where Fuwalos is mandatory even in Centur-Ion. But yeah, that's basically it. This is like a standard Centur-Ion, pure Centur-Ion build. You got the Primeras, the Trudeas, the stand-up, 2 bonfires, just as additional starters that can search Trudea. 3 Oath, the 1 Bonds. Since we don't have the other support yet, I think Bonds is better than like Wake Up, for example, most of the time. And then, 1 Phalanx, and then you just have Bestials, you have Hand Traps, Veiler, Maxi, Ash, Inperm, Ogre, could be Dribble, could be, like Crow, well, probably not Crow, because you would just probably run more Bestials at that point, but, yeah, these are filler slots you can be used for other potential Hand Traps you want to run, and still running Call By plus Cross Out. Again, I'm not running Fuwalos because you absolutely do not need to cross out Fuwalos when you get hit by the Fuwalos, so there's like no point to running this if you were running 3. And yeah, the extra deck is, and this is a pure Centur-Ion build, so this isn't as explosive, so this is mainly just a lot of utility options, like Chaos Archfiend, Ruddy Rose, Baron, this Spader, Chaos Angel, only 1 Blazar, because this deck doesn't really make double Blazar very easily at all, so like, the second Blazar doesn't really come up that much. Instead, you have the red Supernova Dragon, then the Crimson, and 1 of each Centur-Ion Synchros. Again, you really only need to make these once a game, and then that's it. Especially since you can recycle them with Phalanx, you don't need to make them multiple times. Then you have Typhon, since this deck does struggle breaking board, so any bit of help works. And then Almirage and Artemis are basically if your normal summon gets, let's say, hand trapped, you can still turn them into one of these link ones, put them in the grave, and then have a light or dark banish for your Bestials, so at least you can set up, through a hand trap, you can at least set up SP plus regain drawing a card, which is better than nothing. And then of course IP and SV, you can make these when you draw your full combo in addition to a Bestial as well, so yeah, obviously now I'll show you how little Fuwalos actually affects this deck. Alright, see, look at this hand. The standard pure Centur-Ion hand. You got a starter and you got 3 hand traps, okay? So, normal summon Trudea, and then you Trudea will place the Primera, and then Primera special itself, and then Primera will add your stand-up. At this point, your opponent still is not anywhere close to drawing a single card off Fuwalos yet, and here we'll discard a random card off stand-up, we'll discard the Bonds, and then place the Gargoyle, special the Gargoyle, and don't change its level. And at this point, your opponent can Fuwalos you, okay? They Fuwalos now, you're gonna go into Auxilla, and Auxilla will activate its effect, and then you can use Gargoyle, and you can use bonds right now, honestly. Whether you can use this if you want or not to. But if you just pretend this is a blank card instead of bonds, like it's the same thing. Like let's say you discard a dead Fuwalos in your hand, for example. You add a Phalanx, and then set the Phalanx, set the Imperm, End Phase, Auxilla, places your Primera. So at this point, if your opponent Fuwalos you on your turn, they drew one card. That's it. They Upstart Goblin themselves. So very cool, right? Very high value Fuwalos you got there, right? But let's say they held for their own turn, right? So let's go to the main phase, and let's say they Fuwalos you in your draw phase, for example. That would mean that they're going to summon Primera, and then Primera, and then summon the Drudea. So if you're under Fuwalos right now, you can change the level of the monster, add or follow up. You can use stand up, and you can simply you can go into Crimson Dragon, and then Crimson Dragon target Auxilla, and then go into a Blazar Dragon to give your opponent 2 draws, or you can just simply make a Legacia, still give your opponent only 1 draw off of Fuwalos, and then you get to draw and pop. And here we have bonds, so we can set bonds now if you wanted to. So yeah, you get to draw 1, and then you get to also pop 1 of your opponent's cards. So either way, their Fuwalos you can make it so their Fuwalos only draws them 1 card, regardless of during your turn or their opponent's turn. So that's why this deck will probably be seeing an increase in play, especially the Pure Wheels, just because this deck really it turns the Fuwalos into a terrible conditional Upstart Goblin, and nobody is going to be running conditional Upstart wants to run conditional Upstart Goblin in their deck, right? So yeah. So next we have Tearlaments, and really it is really not hard to see why Tearlaments would be good against Fuwalos. This is pretty much almost, I think, card for card, the same build that got like top 10, or that got first place in the rating duels last season, and that got a top 100 in the Duelist Cup, like the highest placing one. There might be like a 1 card difference somewhere, although I don't remember which card I swapped out, honestly. But yeah, this deck, first of all, there's another Mulcharmy here that people run in this deck. I don't play Fuwalos in here, obviously, because well, honestly, it's not even bad to run Fuwalos in here, because technically you have discards. Like, you can discard it for a Crime, you can discard it for Super Poly, Droplet, you can discard it for Sharon, obviously, and you have lots of access to Sharon. So honestly, Fuwalos isn't like the worst card in here, honestly. It's just that if people were running a Mulcharmy in Tearlaments, they tend to lean towards Perulia, because Perulia, in addition to being able to be used as discard fodder, Perulia is an Aqua, so therefore you can use Perulia to fuse into Kid Colors, which is something TCG player, like nobody, no other region, like TCG or OCG, they've never heard that sentence before. They've never heard fuse Perulia into Kid Colors, but here in Master Duel, yes, we can technically do this. Is something you can do. So if you want to play a Mulcharmy, maybe run a few copies of Perulia in here instead of Fuwalos. But yeah, so why this deck is good against Fuwalos? I mean, obviously this deck has the best maxi play in the entire game to start with, which is just make Kid Colors pass, make Kid Colors draw, add like Meta Noise or Soliek, set 1 and then pass, and then you get to do all your special summoning on your opponent's turn. So yeah, that's good against Maxi. That's also very good against Fuwalos. Fuwalos, you will never give your opponent more than 1 draw off Fuwalos if they Fuwalos you on your turn. Like, quite honestly, this is like another deck like Centur-Ion, which it's arguably better to hold the Fuwalos for your opponent's turn. Well, no, that's not true, because unlike Centur-Ion, if you don't get Fuwalos, you can actually make a board with this. Like, you can make like Baron and like SP and then stuff, and then have even more setup. So then, yeah, obviously you probably have the Fuwalos tier on their turn, but it doesn't, like, you never get value off the Fuwalos. They're just gonna make a Kikalos. Best case scenario is they make Kikalos, they search like Metanoi, set, pass, and then they get to play all of their stuff on your turn, while your Fuwalos was an upstart Goblin. The thing is that makes Fuwalos even worse is that technically you don't have to pass on Kit Search Sulliek, because Fuwalos only draws from summons from the main deck or the extra deck. It doesn't draw from every special summon like Maxi does. So theoretically, you can go Kikalos, you don't even have to end there. You can go Kikalos, dump cash, tier cash like normal, and then special summon the tier cash, mill 10, and then try to get lucky off the mill 10. You still get no extra draws off the Fuwalos because that summoning up the tier cash was not from the deck, it was from the grave. So you can do all your milling shenanigans, you you can just opt not to make like a Rokolos or a second tier fusion at the end of your combo, and then still put them on one draw, except you get to do your entire combo and you get to mill a bunch of cards in the process too. So yeah, this card, oftentimes it feels like a liability half the time against tier. It's like you almost achieve nothing with this. But yeah, for the deck list, it's still playing Maxi and Ash, and then the tier, we're playing as many limited copies of the tier names as possible. And then, you know, the Shufflers, the Shadal Beast, the Strudel, the Fenrir with the Raid Soft, the Search tier cash, the Snow, which is still fucking legal in this game, unbelievable. One Seamare. So Seamare, you can run more copies of Seamare as well. This is a very good starter. Obviously, it's basically just Rhinoheart 2.0 that doesn't benefit off screen. So it's a little worse, but the idea is you can summon Seamare off of Deep Sea Prima Donna. This is a card that's popular in OCG lists. Basically, you can target one of your opponent's banished cards and add to your hand or you can special summon a level 4 or lower water monster from your deck. So you can summon, if you get Saw, for example, you can have like the Strudel plus like a Rhinoheart, summon Prima Donna special Seamare directly from deck, and then Seamare effect, get the extra dump another tier name, and then continue comboing from there. I think this was played as this kid randomly. This is like a counter to Blazar. Very funny enough, you can target a Blazar and then send the Blazar back to their extra deck, and then special summon the Seamare. But yeah, there's other utility as well with this card. Obviously, you're not gonna make this most of the time. It's just a utility. It's not like a 15 slot, but it's neat. And then, you know, card destruction, pretty broken. Foolish Burial, Rhoda, Foolish Burial Goods is still worth running even without Pearl Rhino. You can dump Tribute Card, you can search any other tier spell and trap. So you have 2 Grief, you have 3 Scream, 3 Super Poly, Droplet as like a 49 card in deck, Heartbeat, and then like 3 tier traps, Sulliek, Crime, and Meta Noise, Trivia Karma, and 1 copy of Michael Jordan, which is also another target for Foolish Burial Goods. And then the extra deck, you have the Super Poly targets, Mudragon and Garua. You have a Windas because we have Run the Shadal Beast. 3 tier fusions, Dragos Apelia, and I'm running Earth Golem Adagnister as a Super Poly target. Most builds don't run this, they probably run like an IP Masquerade instead, so you can do that. This basically Cybers plus Link Monster, so basically if you play against Mathmech, this gets rid of the entire Mathmech board. It also gets rid of IP Masqueranas as well, since IP Masquerana, if you didn't know, is a Cybers monster. So that's neat. I think this comes up decent amount, although it's not mandatory. You just really need these 2 as Super Poly targets, mainly. And then, you know, Baron, Psychic, and Punisher, since you can make this with, I believe, a level 4. Actually, I think the most common way you make Psychic and Punisher is with 2 level 4s on the field plus a level 3 Destrudo. So yeah, that's another way to go for game. And then Redoer, Dugaris, Zeus, and SV, you know, staples. This is a tier deck. I mean, I'm sure most of you know what tier decks do by now, so I'm not going to spend too much detail on this. But yeah, let me show you how just absolutely little value Fuwalos gets against tier. So obviously with tier combos, there's no set combos. It's going to probably look a bit different each time based on what you mill. However, what's not going to be different is how well this deck plays into Fuwalos. You never have to give your opponent any more than 1 draw anytime you get Fuwalos. So, for example, this hand, all we have is normal summon Rhinoheart, right? You can send Rhinoheart, and then dump Sharon, and use Sharon's effect. At this, if they want a Fuwalos on our turn, this is where they would Fuwalos. And at this point, we would go Sharon, you know, put back the Rhino Heart, and summon Kitkalos, and they would draw one card, and that would be the only card they draw for the entire turn off the Fuwalos. And here, we can add a trap, like a Crime, Sulliek, or Meta Noise, or we could dump Tier Cash and try to mill 8, feel great, and get lucky. Why? Because we're under Fuwalos and not Max C, so they don't actually get to draw off the special summon Cash here like they would under Max C. So we can just mill 8, try to you know, get some good mills, which honestly, because we have Super Poly in hand plus a Snow, we can Super Poly pitch Snow on our opponent's turn, have the Snow live. So I think it's actually beneficial we dump Tier Cash here. As long as we don't make a second fusion, we don't have to give our opponent any more draws off the Fuwalos. So we're gonna mill 2, which always Gamba. 9 out of 10 gamblers quit before they win big. So now we can use Kitkalos, sack itself, summon back the Tier Cash, and then mill 8, feel great. And we actually mill 10. Mill 8, feel great, plus mill the other 2 off Cash here. So I'm like, mill 10, see what we mill. Your side of the field, mill a Shaddoll Beast, mill a... Wow. I don't even want to use Rhino Heart effect. Like, there's no point. I'd rather just keep the... Because I don't want to fusion summon again because we're under Fuwalos. So I don't want to give him an extra draw. So I'm not even going to use Rhino Heart. I'm just going to use Shaddoll Beast. And we'll use Sulliek to add another card to my hand. So let's add a Sharon follow-up. And honestly, we could like nice, we drew the Rhino Heart. Cool. I kinda wanna Sharon pitch the Snow. Mill 3, get okay, sure. Add a Meta Noise. And then Privy Karma, add the Crime. You could Destrudo make a Baron here too. Although, why give your opponent more draws, right? Why not just set 3, and your opponent drew one card off the Fuwalos. One card. Meanwhile, we have a full grave setup with Snow, with Kitkalos in grave. We have 2 soul spell, 2 tier spell traps, a Halfness in hand for another mill 3, a Polymerization, and a Mudora in hand that we can discard off the Super Poly. So, alright, very nice. I hope that one draw was worth it. Also, we have Michael Jordan in the grave. Michael Jordan gonna come in clutch for us. So, yeah. If they do anything... Yeah, that's a nice Mizuki that's gonna get meta-noised. So you can set the Mizuki, and then send the Sharon, and then the Sharon is gonna make a roll Kalos. We can make a Winda. We can make a Winda right now. Fuck it, we can make a Winda with the Shaddoll Beast engraved. So yeah, we have a Winda now. We still have the Crime live because we have 2 other tier spells on the field. We have Michael. Yeah, this is. Yeah, wow, that Fuwalos did literally less than nothing. So here we have Branded, and one note is that I'm currently not running Fuwalos in my Branded build, but you can absolutely run Fuwalos in Branded. You know why? Well, obviously, you know, this deck does run discard cards like Super Poly and Droplets. You know, you can send Fuwalos with them, obvious, and then it can be fused as material for Guardian Chimera, but there's one other synergy this deck has with Fuwalos, and that's Fuwalos is a Branded High Spirits target. So yeah, we have Rinbrum is a level 8 Wing Beast, so you can Branded High Spirits pitch Fuwalos, send Rinbrum into the grave, and then get the Surge off Light Spirits, and then you can combo from there. So technically, Fuwalos is a combo piece. Now, a lot of times, you want to be using, revealing a Dragon monster for High Spirits instead, because those are the better combos, like in Fallen of Albas, for example. So, like, most of the time, you don't want to be using, even if you could discard Fuwalos for Brand and High Spirits, you don't necessarily want to, but you definitely can, and it's another option. It improves the consistency of High Spirits, obviously, so yeah, it's not bad. If Fuwalos becomes if it looks like Fuwalos is becoming a very standard card that you have to run in every deck, based on the meta, feel free to run Fuwalos and Branded. You can cut a couple Cartesias and like a third copy of Keeper of Dragons, a second Quem, and one Albion or anything to put in a third copy of Fuwalos. Totally works. Like, here, I'll actually get rid of the crossout to put in a third Fuwalos. So yeah, I'm just warning you to not get jump scared by branding High Spirits into Fuwalos, because that's gonna happen, and you're gonna, if you're not aware of it already, you're probably gonna shit your pants a little bit. But yeah, Branded. Why Branded's good into Fuwalos? I mean, it's very simple, because you activate Branded Fusion, change Fuwalos, okay, make Sanctifier, pass, play on your opponent's turn. Very simple. You don't have to give your opponent more than one draw. Most of the time, at most, you're probably not going to give your opponent more than one. You're probably going to give your opponent 2 draws at max off Fuwalos. That's pretty much it. By the way, this is a build based off of all the 60 card branded. Well, not 60 card branded builds. There are 53 cards and 56 card grass branded builds. But basically, it's the grass branded builds that top the last Duelist Cup. So this is very similar to those builds. And yeah, at most, there's maybe a line where you go Fusion Deployment and your opponent chains Fuwalos, so they get 1 draw off the Fusion Deployment, and then you activate Branded Fusion, so they get 2 draws. So it's like 2 draws at most. Oftentimes, only 1 draw off the Fuwalos. So, yeah, they don't get very much off this. Again, this might be another deck where if there was game 2 and 3, your opponent might even side out Fuwalos if they go second. So, yeah, as for the build, again, this is mainly taken from other builds, but we have the one tragedy. People don't really run 3 Max E. In fact, I can see a case for dropping Max E, honestly, since this deck doesn't care too much about... It doesn't even care about Max E too often, so it cares even less about Fuwalos. But, yeah, Max E I think is still good to run. Ash Blossom, debatable. The Keeper of Dragon Magic, basically, it's just Surge's Branded Fusion, and I just got a Royal of this that I didn't... I'm not crafting for Royals, I just randomly pulled this from the 2025 bundle, so you might as well run it. I have the Albaz, 2 Aliberg, Mercurier Kit, Cartesia. Some builds were running 3. Most builds only run 1 as a fusion deployment target, but running 3 is also neat, because then it turns Albion into an extender, because you can Albion dump Fallen of Albaz and then special Cartesia, or also you can do High Spirits, dump Albaz, dump Albion. Albion is treated as Fallen Albaz in the grave, special Cartesia, then use Albion's effect to send a spell and trap, cool stuff like that. Then it lets you, having more copies of Cartesia lets your Alistairs and your Keeper of Dragon Spirits dodge Imperm, so that's very neat. Fuwalos you can or cannot run. Sarnir, you can run a Magnabud as well, but Sarnir is the most important Bistio in Branded, because it's actually engine. 3 Albions, Bellion, Foolish, double Gold Sarks, that 2 now, Grass. Grass is debatable. You could not run Grass, honestly, if you don't want to. It's just like, I'm just putting this in as a 60th card. Fusion Deployment, Brand and White Fusion. Triple Tactics Thrust, because Thrust is how you beat Ash on your Branded Fusion. You just Ash for Fusion Duplication, lol, Brand Fusion on your opponent's turn. Nice Ash. And Brand Lost, Super Poly, Called Buys, Forbidden Droplets. Some people run Book of Eclipse instead of Droplets too. That's also another possibility. Double Brand Opening, 3 High Spirits. Brand and Red evenly matched as a target for Thrust. Branded Banishment as a secondary target for Thrust as well. If your opponent didn't Ash your Branded Fusion, you can Thrust for Branded Banishment as well. And 2 copies of Retribution, since oftentimes you're going to have to use 1 copy of Retribution for your turn 1 combo to search Branded Fusion. So you can have a second one as follow-up. It's also just not a bad card. Like, this is literally solid warning if you draw it. It's just, like, it's not great to draw going second, so that's why you can run one of this as well, but it's a good trap, it's a good on-field effect, and obviously you need the Grave effect for most of your combos. Then the extra deck, because we're running Super Poly, we're running Mud Dragon and Garura. If you weren't running Super Poly, which you definitely, there are builds that definitely don't run Super Poly, you can just cut these for a Despian Core Idis. I'm not running this because of space issues, but this gives another summon off of Grand Guignol. You could also run the second Grand Guignol. Like, I would definitely run the second Grand Guignol, especially if you're running triple high spirits if you weren't running Super Poly. Since those lines to add Cartasia to end phase, just to dump Cartasia for the Brand and high spirits to like dump Titaniclad to Titaniclad, summon out Quem, and then Quem specials. Like all those plays. Yeah, if you know Brandon, you know what I'm talking about, but. Yeah, those plays where a second Grand Guignol definitely comes in handy. Whirl of Furious Dragon, Titaniclad, double Albion, double Mirror Jade, Rebellion, Alba, Lenitus, the Lenitussies, you know, show your Tenpai opponents think they're safe, then you just drop the Lenitussi on them. Rinbrum, Albion, I can't believe it's still legal. Verte, also still legal. And Guardian Chimera. So there's another thing you could run, which is yeah, I don't know how to search for it. It's a level 8 Dragon Fusion, right? Fusion Dragon. Yeah, level 8 Fusion Dragon. It's, where is it? Yeah, Chaos Star Source Dragon. So this, some of you have been running Star Source Dragon over Guardian Chimera. Obviously, Chimera has the better effect because you get to draw cards as well. But Chaos Star Source only needs 2 materials to make as opposed to 3 materials regarding Chimera, and it needs a light or dark dragon and another dragon monster, which is not the hardest to build to make. And the neat thing about this is that Guardian Chimera only triggers if it's special from a card effect, so like a Brand and Red, for example. But Chaos Star Source, it summons it basically it's summoned and it pops too. If this is fusion summon at all, you can special summon, which means that you can fusion summon Star Source with something like a Cartasia and still get the pop 2 effect. It's also like yeah, mainly it takes less material to make than Guardian Chimera, and you can get the effect, but it's not fusion summon with a spell effect as well. So yeah, that's another option to run. But yeah, so I haven't played Brand in a while, so I'm a bit rusty. So my combo might look a little weird, but I can show you like a combo that just gets you, that basically just laughs in the face of Fuwalos. Alright, so this is a pretty neat hand, and we actually have out the Fuwalos, but you got me fucked up that you think we're gonna be ashing Fuwalos in this instance. But yeah, how I would play this out is I'd Goat Sark for banishing Mercurier, and then Mercurier will add my Albion the Shadow Dragon, and I will use Albion to send the Fallen Velbas in the grave and draw a card. Nice. And now because Fallen Velbas in the grave, you can special summon Cartasia. That way, our Keeper of Dragon Magic, if it gets Imperm, we have the Cartasia to play around the Imperm to fuse with the Keeper of Dragon Magic to dodge the Imperm. So if you have a play to get Cartasia on the field before you summon Alibur or your normal summoner like Keeper of Dragon Magic, then I would advise to do that first. But now we get to normal summon Keeper of Dragon Magic, and then I'll pitch one of my Ash Blossoms, and I'll add Branded Fusion. And it is at this point where I will activate Branded Fusion, and at this point they will Fuwalos us. So here, if I want to give them the least amount of draws for Fuwalos, I could have chained Cartasia actually to the Keeper of Dragon Magic, but it's fine. So we'll dump Fallen Velbas and Quem. Again, I'm not so practiced in Branded recently. I've only watched 2 hours out of April's 20-hour video, so I don't have everything down, but I think this is a neat line into potentially Fuwalos. So here, we can keep the droplet or set the droplet. I'll set the droplet for now. Go end phase, go to my opponent's turn, and then so wait for him to do anything. It's a white monster, but yeah, here, let's say we go Albion effect and target. I'll target Quem, and I can give them the Ash Blossom, even though I might not want to give them an Ash Blossom because it's a zombie monster. But you know what? Given that, the Quem is going on my side of the field, and the Ash going on their side of the field, and here I'll use Quem. We'll dump the Retribution since I actually want Retribution to add the Brand Fusion back to my hand. That way we can have an extra discard, and now we can do something like Blazing Cartasia fuse with the Keeper Dragon Magic for a Grand Guignol, and then this will trigger, because a card left the extra deck, this will trigger Quem, and then this will also trigger the summon back to Fallen Vel'Baz, and it will also trigger Grand Guignol. And do I want to dump with Grand Guignol? We could dump a something for follow-up. We could dump a Garua for a draw. I can dump Albion for follow-up. We could also dump a Rinbrum potentially, even though we're planning to use the Albast right now. But we can dump a Bistio Sarnier as well to dump like a branded Opening Grave as well. There's like lots of options in here, so I'll dump an Albion just for follow-up. There's probably a better line to do, but now we can summon back the Albaz. And Albaz, since our opponent controls a dark monster, I can pitch the Brand Fusion we just added and go into Lubellion for the white baking. And then Lubellion, trigger white baking, I'll trigger Lubellion, pitch the Ash Blossom, for example, go into Mirror Jade using the Fallen of Albaz plus the Lubellion, and one triggers their white baking to add a White Lord, cool, and a White Prince. Okay, and Skull Servant, sure, dump, and finally, we have the deck that probably plays around Fuwaloss the best. We have Voiceless Voice, or, you know, if you can see the deck name, if you know, you know. But yeah, all the other decks so far I've shown you give your opponent maybe usually one draw, at most 2 draws off of Fuwaloss, so it's really not that big of a deal. This deck usually gives your opponent 0 draws off Fuwaloss. Like, if there's actually no point where it's good for them to activate Fuwaloss, and if they preemptively activate Fuwaloss for some reason, they'll just hand loop themselves for 1. Because this is a ritual deck, so how it usually goes is you add your ritual monsters to your hand, then you ritual summon them from hand, and the only time you special summon from the deck in this deck is with Diviner for, you know, when you sack it for like a ritual summon, or for Trias. So if you don't open Diviner, then chances are you're not summoning from the deck. Radiance of the Voiceless Voice, you know, Radiance can technically special summon from deck, but obviously if you're under Fuwaloss, you can just not special summon from deck with this, like no big deal. And the other time is prepares the Voiceless Voice, which, you know, if a ritual monster you have gets removed from the field, you can use this to summon a light ritual monster from your deck. But obviously, if it's turn 1, the chances are your ritual monster is probably not getting removed from the field, so you probably don't even have a chance to trigger prayers of the Voiceless Voice. So most of the time, the only time you're ever going to play into Fuwaloss at all is with Diviner, and that's like 1 draw. That's it. That's really not that big of a deal. And maybe on your opponent's turn, you could potentially give them another draw with Saravis summoning, you know, the ritual Saravis from deck. That can give you 1 draw off Fuwaloss if they see it for their turn. But I mean, that's it. That's like that's literally an upstart goblin. At most, in like a entire turn cycle between your turn and your opponent's turn, Fuwaloss will only give your opponent 1 draw at most, maybe on like either turn. So yeah, this deck, if Fuwalos is really prevalent, you can just... This deck will get popular because this deck literally does not care at all. And also this deck doesn't run Fuwalos itself because it doesn't really have anything to do with this. The most utility Fuwalos has in this deck is that Fuwalos plus Ash is left 7 levels, so you can use Saphira to ritual summon your Skull Guardian using Fuwalos plus Ash. But like, I mean, that's not really, I mean, that's not really real. Ideally, you aren't doing that. Like, you're gonna use Low this as the entire Tribune most of the time. So yeah, this is a build that's very similar to the builds that top like 100 of Duelist Cup. So yeah, the engine is always similar. I think mostly every Voiceless Voice build plays 3 Low, 3 Diviner, 3 Saphira, Saravis. If you play the Nadir package, you play 2 Nadir plus 1 Maximus. The Trias, 1 Saravis, 2 Skull Guardian, and then 1 Pendulum Graph. Again, Pendulum Graph can summon Meteor Burst, so it just kind of owns the Tenpai matchup. Not that this deck needs any more help than Tenpai matchup, but it is also Spell Negates, so having 2 Omni Negates is... 2 Spell Negates is very nice. Then 3 Prep, 1 Extravagance, and 2 Prayers, 3 Barrier, and then 1 Blessing and 1 Radiance. And then the rest is just random non-engine. You can run Hand Traps. Sometimes people, instead of running Hand Traps, they ran Tactics and Super Polymerization instead, since sometimes Hand Traps aren't as impactful. You could run Floodgates and Judgment, I guess, as well, although with Tenpai being less common, you're gonna go first less often, so maybe that's not the best idea. But yeah, I probably wouldn't run Fuwalos in this deck, because again, this deck can't really make use of this, so don't need it. And extra decks, since we're running Extravagance and Nadir and Super Poly, we're running 2 Intis and 2 Garura, just so you don't have like dead Super Polys or dead Nadir Servants potentially. Then the Mud Dragon as another Super Poly target. The Herald for Maximus, and sometimes you can send off Diviner. The Meteor Burst for the Pendulum Graph. Chaos Angel, you make this with a Trias plus Low. That's a 1 plus a 9, so you make a light Chaos Dragon. You can make that off of 1 Diviner. And Typhon, Linkuriboh. Typhon, because this deck sometimes struggles with cards with monsters that can't be targeted, so this is an alpha them. Secure Gardener for the Linkuriboh, so you can trigger your own Blessing and put your Low in grave and put a extra deck monster in grave if you hard draw the Maximus. You can still use Maximus if you hard draw it just by turning Low with Linkuriboh into Secure Gardener and then putting the Linkuriboh in grave. Fergie, send off Maximus. It's basically a draw 1. You like draw 1 and put the worst card back into your deck. Double Dynamano and then 1 SP Little Knight. And you want to see how little Fuwalos does to this deck, so here. Alright, this hand, perfect Voiceless Voice hand. So let's go Saphira and dump Prayers, and we'll add a Skull Guardian. Imagine they Fuwalos here. Imagine they have my opponent has Fuwalos in hand, thinking it would do something. So here, I'm just gonna use it right away because this plays around a Bestial or Crow on the Low by sacking the Low right now. If they do have a Crow or Bestial for the Low, I can just Skull Guardian out another one. And if they imperm the Skull Guardian, I really don't care because I already have the Low. So the imperm, I have everything I need already. I don't. If they have an imperm, they would have to imperm the Low. Otherwise. Or they would have to imperm the Skull Guardian right now, and I don't care what I add on the Skull Guardian. Okay. But, yeah, we're gonna use Low, Chainlink 1 to play around Bell. And Skull Guardian, I'll add a... I'll add a Saravis to hand, sure. And then Low specials itself. And Low will place the... Barrier. I won't use Barrier yet because I'm going to use Nadir Servant. Potentially we can draw into something else. Yeah, Nadir. Send Garura. Add Maximus. And draw a card off the Garura. Again, at no point would our opponent have drawn any card off of their Fuwalos if they had one. So now I'm going to Maximus. Banish the Garura. And here we're gonna Maximus, I'll send Herald plus Fergie, and use Pharaoh, Chainlink 1, see what I draw off the Farigite. So I already have a card I have 2 cards I can put back, either the Maxi or the Saphira, so that's nice. If you draw into a prep, pretty good card. Pretty good card. And I'll add a Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon because you can prep for the second prayer, and then I'll add a Saravis because why not, right? And then prayer, I literally have everything I need, but I suppose we can add Blessing. That way, Blessing can like add something back on a opponent's turn. But here, I will prayers for the Pendulum Graph, hitting the Maximus, and Blessing can add back a Saphira. And here, because we had Nadir, I can special summon Saravis, putting back the prayer and putting back a... I'll put back a Nadir Servant, why not? Because I already have plenty of Saravis, I have plenty of Saphiras in my hand, and I can trigger this, but there's no need. So yeah. Awesome. On our opponent's turn, yeah. By the way, just I'm just saying, opponents drew 0 cards off Fuwalos. 0 cards off Fuwalos. That entire time. Sick. And we have a Skull Guardian, Pendulum Graph, low with a barrier plus Blessing, and then the low is going to summon back on our opponent's turn potentially to get a Saravis. We have I have a out to Call by the Grave, so if they have the Call by the Grave, we have the Pendulum Graph too, and the Saravis can also summon out the Saravis from hand, which by the way, if our opponent full losses the Saravis Dragon Sage, they still wouldn't draw because we would be summoning the Saravis from hand. So they still, this entire turn, full loss drew them no cards. Absolutely no cards off either player's turn. Sick. And alright, you summoned a monster? Okay, so Saravis then will get this out. Summon the low. If they have a Call by the Grave, we have an out to the Call by the Grave too off the Pendulum Graph. And then the low will summon itself back. And low will place the Trap Radiance. So nice. We have a full board. We literally have everything. We have all 3 Ritual Monsters, all 3 Spell and Trap. And our opponent, if they had Fuwalos, they would have drawn 0 cards. 0 cards on their turn, 0 cards on our turn off the Fuwalos. So yeah, if you want to beat any deck that plays Fuwalos, play Voiceless Voice. So yeah, hopefully Fuwalos won't be seeing as much play as we all feared in a best-of-1 format. However, if it does, now you'll know what decks you can play to, beat this card. And I've only included 5 decks. There are plenty more decks that also special summon, not just backdoor decks, not just lab, that can also play well in the Fuwalos. So leave in the comments some of those, and let me know what other decks you think are very good against Fuwalos too. And thanks for watching.